Okay guys, so now that we are able to make our users register on our site, so let's see that how do we make them login. So for login, what we are going to use this library that is called passport.js, and here we are basically going to use the passport local authentication, because passport contains different strategies. And what strategies means that passport had different providers, that you can use Facebook OAuth or Google OAuth or Twitter OAuth and so on and so forth, but it also contains one strategy that is called local strategy, and that simply means that you are going to authenticate users with their username and password. So that's what we are going to implement in this video. So let's go back to our application, and here we need to install the dependencies, that is the passport and passport local, because it requires both the dependencies. So let me clear out. So npm I passport and passport local. So it will take a couple of seconds to install, and now we have it installed. So now let me simply start the server. So npm run dev, and now we can minimize this window here. So now instead of doing everything inside our app.js file, what we can do, we can simply create a new folder here inside our root folder. So let me create a new folder here called utils, like this, and here inside this utils folder, what I'll do, I'll create a new file, and that would be called passport.auth.js. So passport.auth.js. So here firstly what we need to do, we need to require passport. So const passport equal to require passport, and then we also need the local strategy from the passport local that we installed. So local strategy equal to require passport local, and then we need to call a strategy on this. Since we are directly calling local strategy, so we can directly call strategy here, that is dot strategy. So now this is all about this. And now what else we need here, we also need the user model here, because we are trying to make a user login using his email and password. So we need the user model also here in this file. So const user equal to require, and here we need to go inside the up1 folder and then into the models folder, and then let me ignore this, and then we need the user model file here, like this. And now what we can do, we can simply use this thing here, that is the passport thing here, and basically it's a middleware. And basically what I'll be doing is that I'll be requiring this file, that is passport.js, directly inside our app.js file, and it is simply a middleware. So we can do passport.use, and here we need to provide in the local strategy. So we can say new local strategy, like this, and here it takes in a couple of options and a verify function. So for the verify function, we can write it async, and here it takes in 3 parameters or 4 parameters depending on the options you provide here. So in case you want request here inside this function, then we can provide that option here. So let me write it here first. So request username and password and done, and basically done is a callback function, and it will all make sense once I'll write the code. And here basically if you are writing request here, then you need to provide here an option called pass request to callback, and here it should be true, like this. But we are not going to use this request inside this async function. So let me remove this line from here, that is I do not want this to pass this request to callback. So let me remove this thing from here, and let me also remove this thing from here. So we are simply using this username and password here. And now here there are 2 more fields that we need to provide, and that is the username field. So username field, and in our case username field is the email field, and the password field is the password here. And why it is so? It is because if we go to our login.ejs form here, we see that the input name for our username or email is this email thing here. So therefore we need to provide here, that is the username field is our email field here. So it matches this thing here. And similarly the password field is password here, and this password matches this password here, that is coming inside the request.body thing here from the client side. So therefore you need to provide the same names which are here inside this username field and password field. And in case this name was username, then you do not need to provide these two options here. We can omit this option also, that is password field, because our password field's name is password. So it doesn't matter. Even if we provide this, it won't matter. But I am trying to be explicit here. So I am providing here both the fields here. And now here, in most of the tutorials, you won't find using this function as an async function. Basically, they'll be using callbacks, but here I'll try to use modern JavaScript. So that is why I'm making this function as an async function. So whatever we do inside this function should be inside try and catch block. So try catch like this. And if there is an error, then we can simply call done with the error parameter as the only parameter or only argument here. And if we look at the done function here, it takes in 3 parameters. That is the error. If there is any user, then we can pass in the user, and then some options here. And basically those options only contains the flash messages. And we'll be providing those flash messages. So once we are inside the try block, you'll get to know more about the done function. So, but for now, you simply know that if there is an error, you pass error, and that's the only thing you need to do. So now let's go inside our try block here. And here what we can do, instead of using this username thing here, we can simply write it email, because our username is the email here. Like this. So now let me save this. And now what I want to do, I want to try to find the user with this email. So we can say const user equal to await user dot find one. And here with what field we need to find? We need to find it the email thing here. And since both the things are same, that is this key and this value, so we can omit the value here and we can simply find it like this. And now this user might not exist in our database. So let's check for it. So if not user, that is if the user does not exist, then what we need to do, we need to do something. So let me make a comment here that username / email does not exist like this. And here we can say that let's write simply that email exists. And now we need to verify the password. I'm simply making these comments just to make it easier for you guys to continue. So now if the user does not exist, then what we need to do, we need to return from this try block, and we also need to call the done function or the done callback function. So we see here that it takes in 3 parameters, that is the error, the user, and options. So for the error, there is not an error here, so we can provide in null here. And for the user, we can provide in false because there is no user. And for the options, we can provide in a flash message. So let me write a message here, that is username email not registered. Since we cannot find it inside our database, so it means that the username and email is not registered. So that's what we need to do when the username or email does not exist. We always need to call this done function here. So now let's come here. And here we are sure that the email exists, and now we need to verify the password. And now to verify the password, what we can do, either we can use the bcrypt library to verify the password here, or what we can do, we can go to the user model.js file, and here we can create a method here for this user schema. So let's write a method here for this user schema. So we can say user schema dot methods dot is valid password. And you can name this function whatever you like. I am simply calling it is valid password. And again, this would be an async function. So async function like this, and this would take in only one argument, that is the password. And here we need to use the try and catch block since we are inside an async function. And if there is an error, what we can do, we can simply throw an error. So throw create error, or let me call this method here, that is create HTTP error. And I hope that it automatically imported this module or this package, that is create HTTP errors from HTTP errors. And here we can say internal server error like this. And here we can pass in the error dot message, whatever the message is coming inside this error thing here. So now here inside the try block, what we need to do, we need to verify the password. So we can say await bcrypt dot compare password. So we'll use this function here, and here we need to provide in the password here, that is coming this thing here that is coming inside this function. and the password to match with. So we can use this dot password like this. And now we can simply return this thing, that is return like this. So it would be a boolean whether it is true or it is false. So now let's save this file here, that is user model.js. So now let's use this method, that is valid password, inside our passport.js. So let me copy the method name here and let's go to our passport.js. And here what we'll do, we'll say const is match, and this is match would be either true or false. So we can say await user dot is valid password, or let me paste it here, that is valid password, and here we can simply pass in the password, and this password is this password. So now the result of this is match would be either true or false, and depending on the result we want to return something. So let's say if is match, that is if is match like this, otherwise we need to do something else. So if it is a match, then what we need to do, we need to again return from this block of code. So return, and we need to call the callback function, that is the done callback function, and here there is no error, so we can provide a null here. Then for the user, since it is match is true, so what it means that we have a user here, so we can pass in the user thing here, and then that's all what you need to do. If you, in case you want, you can pass in a success message also, but that's not what I'm going to do here. Otherwise, what we need to do, we need to return something else, and that would be again return done, and here we'll pass in null for the error, false for the user, and there would be the third option here, and that is the message, that is the flash message, and the message would be incorrect password. Not incurrent, but incorrect password, like this. So now let's save this, and that's all what we need to do inside this passport.js, though we need to write a couple of lines more, but that would be only copy and paste. But here we can simplify this statement here, that is this statement here. So we can use a ternary operator instead of using this if else block here. So what we can do, we can simply say return is match, depending on is match is true or false. So if it is true, what we need to return, we simply need to return null user. So let me copy and let me paste. Otherwise, what we need to return, we need to return this thing from here. So let me copy and let me paste it here. And now let's remove this if else block of code from here. So now that's all what we need to do here. So now we need to serialize and deserialize the user. So let's go back to the documentation here, and it would make more sense. So in typical passport local authentication, the credentials of the user, that is the username and password, is only transmitted during the login request. And if the authentication succeeds, that is if we are here, that is if the password matches and the email exists, then we are calling this thing here. So when this thing would occur, then a session would be established, and then a cookie would be set in the browser with that session ID, and only the cookie is transferred between the client and the server. The credentials of the user is not transferred on each subsequent request. So therefore we need to serialize and deserialize the user. So what we can do, we can simply copy and paste this part of code from here, from this website. So let me copy it and let me paste it here inside our passport.js file. So let me paste it here. So let me save this now. So basically serialize means for setting the user ID inside the session, and the session would automatically create the cookie, and this all thing is done behind the scenes by passport library. You have not to do anything for this. Similarly for deserialize user, whenever a request comes from the browser, it contains a cookie, and from that cookie we find the session, and if the session exists, we would simply call this thing here, that is done with this user here. And again, you do not need to know much about these things here, that is passport.serialize user and deserialize user. I am just telling it to you, that is what all is going behind the scene, but you can simply copy and paste it like this here. So now everything inside this passport.js is complete, but still login would not work because we need to do something more. So now let's go to our app.js file, and here we again need to require the passport module. So const passport equal to require passport, like this, And we do not need to require the local passport local here, because that everything is done inside this passport or .js file. And now here, after we initialize the session, then we need to do something, and that is app.use, and here we'll say passport.initialize like this, and then app.use passport.session like this, and make sure that you call these two lines of code after you initialize the session here. Otherwise you'll be getting an error here, and we can make a comment here, that is for passport JS authentication. And then finally, after writing these two lines of code, what we need to do, we need to require this file, that is passport.js. So let me require it directly here. So require, we need to go into the utils folder or whatever it is called, utils, and then passport auth like this. So now let's save this. So now again, we need to do some more thing inside our route here, that is auth route, because here we have only initialized the passport.js authentication and the passport.js local authentication. But our auth route, that is where the login request is coming. So let's go to the login request here. That is this request. Passport doesn't know about this. So let's use passport here also. So let's say, firstly, what we need to do, we need to require passport. So passport equal to require passport like this. And here inside the post request, let me remove this thing from here. And here we'll simply write a middleware using the passport thing here. So passport.authenticate. And here we need to provide in the type of strategy, because passport contains many strategies as I've told you before. So here we need to provide in a string, that is local like this, and it means local strategy. And here we can provide in some options here, and those options would be success redirect. That is, if the login is successful, that is if the user is authenticated, then where should he be redirected to? So let us make him redirect to the home page, or let's say let him redirect to the profile page, and this should be user/profile. And here we can provide in one more option, that is the failure redirect. That is if the authentication is not successful. So we'll say failure redirect, and this should take him to auth/login, that is back to the login page. And here we can simply say failure flash to be true. And why this failure flash to be true? Because in our passport.js, we have provided these messages here, that are these flash messages. That is, in case the user does not exist, so this is the message. In case the password is wrong, so this is the message. And one thing more, that inside a production application, you should never provide this message, that is incorrect password. But instead you should provide a message something like this, that is username/password incorrect. So now let's go back to our authroute.js. So now let's save this application. And now if I'll try to log in inside my application, I should be logged in. So let's go back to our application here. So let me reload here. So we are on the login page, and let me try to log in with this email here, that is johndoe@gmail.com. Password should be 12, and if we click enter, we see that we are taken back to the user profile page, and we know that we are logged in. And let me click this logout, but we won't be able to log out because we haven't handled this route here. So to log out a user, it is very simple to do. So let's go to this route here, that is logout route. And instead of sending logout, what we can do here, we can simply say request.logout. And this comes from the passport package. That is, passport attaches this method, that is logout, on the request. And it is done internally. We do not have to do anything for this. And after this, what we need to do, we need to redirect him somewhere. So res.redirect, not redirect, but redirect. And let's redirect him to somewhere. So let me redirect him back to the home page. So now let's save this. So our application restarted, and let me click on logout. So let me click on login again. So let me log in again. So johndoe@gmail.com, and password would be 12. So let me log in. So we see that we are on the profile page. So now if we click on logout, we should be taken back to the home page. So let me click on logout here, and we see that we are taken back to the home page. And now one thing more, that is what passport does is that it automatically attaches the user object, that is the current signed in user, inside request.user. So let's see that how do we do that. So let's go to the profile.ejs auth user route here. Here where we are using this route here, that is /profile. So let's write something here. Here we can simply write console.log request.user like this. So if we save this, and now we know that if the user is authenticated, then we'll be seeing the user object inside the console. So let's go back. So let me log out and let me log in. Let me go to johndoe@gmail.com, password 12. Now we are logged in, and if we go back to our application, we see that we are getting this statement here that is coming from this log statement, and it is the actual user inside request.user. So let's render this user inside our profile page. So let's pass this user here. So here let's write it like this, that is const person equal to request.user. And it is for a reason that I'm calling this person here, not user. So here what we can say, we can simply pass in person here like this. And we can remove this log statement from here. And now we need to go to the profile page or profile.ejs file. And here we need to fill in these blanks. That is the ID of the user. So let me use the template here. That is the EJS template to output something. So EJS out. And here we'll say person.id like this. And similarly, let me copy it from here. Now let me paste it here. And here it should be person.email like this. And for the role, we can omit it for now because it is for role-based authentication. And now let me log out the user object itself. So here we can simply say person like this. So now let's save this file. So now let's go back. And now if we go to the profile page, we are lost in space because our session is not saved because we are using memory store, and that's what we are going to do in the next video. That is how to save the sessions, and the session would persist on server reboots. So now let's try to log in first. So johndoe@gmail.com, password 12. So now let me log in. We are to the profile page, and here we see the ID of the user, the email of the user, and the user object itself. And this user object is only for demonstration purposes. So guys, now we know that how to register our users, how to log in our users. And now one thing remains, that is how to conditionally show the navbar items. That is, if he is logged in, then we should not be seeing these two tabs here, that is register and login. And if he is logged out, then we should not be able to see this profile, manage users and logout button here. So that's what we are going to do in the next video. And one thing more which we are going to do in the next video is that how to make the route accessible only when the user is logged in or whether he is logged out. So that's all about this video. So if you like the video, do hit the like button, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel, do subscribe to the channel. So thank you, bye bye, tata, take care, and have a good day and have a great day.